origin of the Haddam Neck Fair is actually attributed to the Haddam Neck Grange. The Grange was a community organization that focused on agriculture improvements and initiatives, and they advocated for the local farmer. Believe it or not, in 1910, I'd say 90% of the residents of Haddam Neck were farmers. The Grange also focused on community service and local improvements. And it was really the voice for the local farmer. So fairs were an opportunity for the farmers and their families to show off all their products, their livestock, their animals, their crops. The ladies were able to show off their sewing, their knitting, their baking, their gardens. And it was really a place for them to meet and greet each other and learn from each other. Fairs were also a place where farmers could learn about new farming techniques and learn about the latest equipment. And it also gave them a chance to visit. It was sort of a working vacation. The first fair was held actually in 1910 in a local field on the East Hampton-Haddam Neck border. And it was so successful that the Haddam Neck Grange decided, let's buy some property and build a building. So in 1911, they bought some farmland, and within 2 weeks, in late August, they built the Haddam Neck Grange Hall. And they held the first official fair on Labor Day in 1911. It always has been Labor Day since the very beginning. Probably for the first 50 some odd years, it was only held one day, and it was on Labor Day. Later in 1957, it went to 2 days, that Sunday and then Monday of Labor Day. And in 1981, it actually went to 3 days. And in 2001, they added Friday nights. Haddam Neck Grange was the organization that ran the fair, and they were very forward-thinking, and they did allow women and young children to become members. So it was a very family-oriented activity. And believe it or not, prior to the women getting the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, there were many suffragette booths at the Haddam Neck Fair, and women would come and advocate for the women's right to vote. So I think women always played a very important part of the fair. By serving the dinners, and then later on they became directors, and nowadays I'd have to say if not half of the fair directors are women, maybe more than half. But they're a very vital part of the organization and the running of the fair. I think it's interesting that in 2020 there was no fair because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There were some other times that a fair was not held, particularly during World War II. They did not hold the fair for, I think, 1943, 44, and 45. And then there was one year when polio was an epidemic. And although they did hold the fair, they required that all children under the age of 16 show a certificate showing that they'd either been vaccinated or that they had been tested for polio, or they were not allowed on the fairgrounds. Haddam Neck is part of the town of Haddam, but it's located on the east side of the Connecticut River, and there's no bridge in between. So I think it's actually a really good opportunity for people from Haddam and Higganum and other local towns to actually come and visit Haddam Neck and find out what it's all about. It's always been a big part of the East Hampton community because we are directly attached to them, and they've been always very busy and active in the fair.
It's much smaller than a lot of the other fairs you'll go to, so it's much denser, closer sense of community here. Smaller rides, but people who are always friendly. You know, you're gonna know everyone that you see eventually. You walk around long enough, you're gonna recognize every single person you went to high school with.
It's a very community focused fair. It's very small compared to some of the other bigger fairs in Connecticut. So it's also a place where I think people feel relaxed coming to, and it's very family oriented. And I think most people feel very safe coming there and letting their kids run around. And it's small, but there's enough to keep you busy all day long.
It's got bigger and more diverse, and we're attracting, I think, a wider range of people. Some people come for just the pulls, the tractor pull and the truck pulls. There's always an enthusiastic crowd for the horse pull. That's a very traditional event, and I think families come. We try to be family oriented. That's the purpose of this. Agricultural based, family oriented. We really do like that aspect of it. We try to keep that going.
People still do bring their animals to show, and people do still enter things from their gardens and their baked goods and their sewing and their knitting and their quilting. We have sort of these, little in-community competitions about who can do the best quilt or who can bake the best bread. This year it was heavy on the jellies, who could make the best jellies and jams. Well, the baby show has been part of the Haddam Neck Fair since the very beginning, believe it or not. In the early days, they would have a lot of athletic events like the 50-yard dash. They would have potato sack races. They would have three-legged races. One year they had catch the greased pig race. They'd grease a pig up and everybody who entered had to chase it around and catch it. And of course the prize was the actual pig. You got to take it home with you. Today they have things like skillet tossing, which I've been doing every year since they started it, which has become also very competitive. It's become, again, very competitive. We're not competing with our goats, we're competing with our skillet. There's always been local organizations that have had booths at the fair because, for one, things like the local churches and local not-for-profits, this is a chance for them to raise some money, but also to get their profile out there and to meet people and tell them about their organization.
I think it's good for the community because it's a chance to meet your community. It's a chance to really get involved. I mean, look at all these booths that we have around here. You have both the Republicans and the Democrats set up. You can meet and mingle with every type of person you could possibly imagine. And it's just a chance to grow as a human yourself.
And it's an opportunity to give back to the community. The fair organization does give back to the community in scholarships and donations and other things. So it's a good way to give back.
A lot of people come just for the fair food. We have a great variety of food vendors. We have a lot of entertainment, and the entertainment goes for everybody. Not only the adults will go to the polls, the children will go to the rides. And then if you're a child and you exhibited something, you just can't wait to get upstairs and see what kind of a prize you got or if you added a flower. So it's the anticipation of that.
I like going to the fair because I love everything that they do here. We love the rides still. I may have grown a little bit past the age of going on them, but I still go on them. The food, the community, because I grew up in the neighborhood, and I like to see all of the garbage cans that I used to paint, painted over with whatever the kids are painting nowadays. They do it every year, and it's always fun to see what kids do with it.
It's very traditional for me. I've been coming every year since I was born, and believe it or not, I still get excited in August. You build up this anticipation to the fair. And we really look forward just to being up there for 3 days, or 3.5 days now. Just meeting people, visiting with people, hanging out. It's just a really good time all around.
It's a great chance to catch up with all of the people that, that they say it takes a town to raise a kid. Well, I get to see all the people who helped raise me.
You get community participation. That's what it is. There are nobody gets paid. All volunteer, and almost everybody in Haddam Neck participates in one way or another.
I just think that it's grown considerably over the years, but it also still has its very early sort of atmosphere. A small country town fair where pretty much everybody knows everybody else. And I think it will continue that way for a very long time. Some fairs have gotten just way too big, and I think this one just maintains its real humble beginnings.